Hi there and welcome to this short lecture series on research methods. My name is Dr. a.cliffe. Hopefully by now you've watched the previous videos all about what interviews are, the different types that you can do, from structured right the way through to unstructured and semi-structured. This topic today is all about online interviews as we kind of shift towards that during the global Covid-19 crisis. If you're interested in how to actually ask those questions and design your interview, then please do watch one of those videos, and the link should be popping up now or in the description below. So, as you're well aware, I hope you are currently safe during this global COVID-19 crisis. So, obviously, social distancing, as researchers, we kind of have to think about how we're actually going to go about doing our interviews that we had planned for the summer and beyond. Saying this is not going to go away anytime soon, so using online interviews is certainly a really great technique to at least get that face-to-face data, albeit at least it's virtually. And it is better than telephone interviews, to be fair. So today I'm going to talk you through how to plan that, what some pitfalls to look out for, what's the main three types of software that you can use, what's the positives and negatives of doing this compared to face-to-face, and a little bit about ethics that has to be discussed really when we're using online interviews. So let's crack on. So in planning then, my advice first and foremost is you're going to have to increase the time that you set aside to get your participants involved in your study. So at the start of your research journey, you would have made a proposal, and you would have set out some time to actually, arrange a meeting with your participants to actually go, be it in their office, be that in their homes, or even trying to get people in the street. You would have set out time to do that, but I'm sure you can appreciate yourself that everyone's working from home now mostly. Everything is up in the air, so if people have said originally that they'd agree to do a face-to-face, well, that's probably going to change, and people are working from home, they've got different pressures now that they didn't have before, so you're going to want to increase that time scale to give yourself enough time to make sure that you can ask your participants and give them the option to tell you when they're free, because it might not necessarily be in a week's time. They might say I can only do it in a month's time, etc. So do keep that in mind. And obviously, if you're going to extend your timescale for you to actually do your interviews, have a think about how that might well impact later on in terms of you actually transcribing, analysing that data, and then writing up. So you may have to adjust how many you're going to do, and you don't know what you're going to get, really. No one really does in this current climate. So you may find that people who've originally said yes to face-to-face are actually now too busy. Whereas vice versa, you may actually find that when you're stuck at home, like they might be, that they might actually welcome the distractions. So you might get an increase in participation, but there's no real studies about that just yet, so it's just something to keep in mind. You may well have to do it at different times than you're used to, so it's unlikely that you're probably going to do a face-to-face interview at 8 o'clock at night, but that may well now be the case, being online, that you have to adjust to their working environment, and you may have to do it outside of times, maybe on weekends you're not used to, so be prepared for that. I can't stress this enough, make sure that you pilot your methods first. So if you're a novice researcher and you've never ever really done any interviews, then being thrown straight into an online interview, which is difficult for numerous reasons, such as rapport building and picking up those nuances of body language, which you don't get really through a computer screen, which you do in real life. It's vital that you don't go into your first ever interview with your participants fumbling about trying to get your microphone working, making sure you understand the software. It's going to look unprofessional, and you're not really going to get the data, and you're wasting your time, and you're wasting their time as well. So any good research will always pilot their methods, whatever that might be. It's no different here but online. Do that with friends, family, your tutor potentially. It's imperative that you pilot it and you understand the differences of online to face-to-face. So the biggest one mainly is in face-to-face, as soon as you ask a question, they finish, you can start your next one. Whereas obviously online, there's often a bit of lag, and you don't want to have that awkward, oh, you go, I go. You want to make sure that you're piloted, that you understand there is a different method of doing this than it would be face to face. So try and iron out those kinks before you start, mainly. You've got to make sure as well that your participants has access to the software and suitable audio. So whatever software suite you're going to use to conduct these online interviews, you're going to make sure that they've got it, make sure that it's accessible, make sure that it's working, and make sure that they have access to some suitable audio as well. Now, I'll come on to this later on in terms of an ethics point of view, but you've got to make sure that you only hear the conversation. So what I mean by this is often you'll be working from home now, potentially, and you may well have this interview going. Now you need to make sure that you're in a quiet room so that no one else in your household can listen in, because these people you're interviewing as part of their lives, they're divulging information to you, that you don't want other people outside of your room to actually listen to that and know that, because from an ethics point of view, that's a breach of confidentiality. So you've got to make sure that you're set up in such a place, or people are aware, be that they put their headphones in or something, that only you can hear the conversation that they're talking about. So what about software then? Well, online interviews, I say, are starting to become the norm now during the Covid-19 crisis. And there's many packages out there already. Most of them are free, which you might actually already be using for your private life or even work life. So I'm going to talk you through the three most common ones and some of the pros and cons to that. And that's Skype, Zoom, and Microsoft Teams. So Skype for this is the safe bet out of the three of them. So it's been used for a very long time now, Skype. Many Microsoft computers come with it installed already, and it can be used on other operating systems as well. So if you've got a Mac, you can still use Skype. So the reason it's the safe bet is because that's exactly what it was designed for. It was designed for online one-to-one video calls, and many people are familiar with it. Skype has been around for a long time. It's one of the oldest ones out there, and it does its job. There's no real fancy stuff to it. It's just a great way to video call people. So the pros of it, I say, it's familiarity. Your participants are unlikely to have never heard Skype or never used it in the past, so they're more familiar with it. They can just log on, give the Skype name, and then you can carry on doing their interview. It's less complicated, so Zoom and Microsoft Teams, which I'll talk about, have different stuff, blaring backgrounds and all this kind of stuff. You can cut all that out with Skype. Skype is just your nice standard, and it's free. Some of the cons, well, you can't actually really, as far as I know, record your interviews through Skype. So that's not necessarily an issue if you've got a dictaphone or your mobile phone, but some people, for verbatim transcription, like to see people, how their facial features change during the questions, or did they lean back in their chair, that kind of stuff. If you're non-verbatim, that doesn't really matter. I've often found that they can be unstable in terms of its quality and connection. Certainly out of the three, I often find this the most common one to have a breakup in audio or lag, so that's something for you to consider. I often find it's a bit more difficult for when you're trying to do more than two people, so if you're thinking of doing a focus group, good luck with that if you're doing that online, because I think that's very difficult to do, but if that is something that you're planning on doing, then I wouldn't recommend Skype for that. And it's not as easy to share screens or anything like that. It's not as intuitive as the other two. So those are some of the pros and cons of Skype. What about Zoom then? So Zoom is the new kid on the block. So video conferencing software is really hit the ground running during COVID-19. And many companies start to use this software. So it's similar to Skype, but there's more features. So it can be run on all PCs. And it is a great tool, certainly if you're doing multiple people. But the main thing I have to stress here, and that's why I've highlighted this in orange, is the free version does come with a major limitation, and that is a 40-minute time per meeting. After 40 minutes, it's going to cut off. So it's fine if you're only planning on a 20-minute, 30-minute interview, but do you want to run the risk of potentially getting into, really delved into the interview for it then to be cut off after 40 minutes? So have a think about that. So what's the pros then? It's starting to become very familiar. Many people are starting to use it, certainly from the younger generation. It's very straightforward. You can record the meeting. I think they're fantastic for focus groups because you get to see everybody on the screen and the ability to hide your background as well. So a lot of people, which is weird, if you do face-to-face, they're more than happy for you to come into your office or you to go into their office, for example. However, when they're working from home and it's their private space, they often feel a little bit vulnerable. So the ability to hide that background, so to pretend that they're not there, that you can't see into their private lives, is really useful for building that rapport with your participants. And it might go the same for you as well. You might feel a little bit more comfortable if they can't see what's behind you. What are the cons then? Well, I say major limitation is that time limit. There have been some security issues that have come out relatively recently in terms of Zoom, that it's not necessarily encrypted. I don't know how true they are, but it's something to consider potentially if you're worried about that. If you're worried about security issues in terms of your end, in terms of confidentiality, and even if there are no issues, because it's been in the press so widely recently that your participant may refuse to do it through Zoom because they think there is a security issue. So again, something to keep in mind. And then finally, not everyone wants to download a new piece of software to their PC, so do keep that in mind. Finally, the last one is Microsoft Teams, which is their new Skype. So I've been very fortunate. I teach online since October through Microsoft Teams, so I've been well familiar with Microsoft Teams out of the three of them, and I've been using this before Covid-19 even came on the block. So it's been out for quite a while now, and it's predominantly for businesses, and it was set up for businesses to work more collaboratively. And many companies are using this software currently. Your universities or your workplace might also be using Microsoft Teams, because it's great. It does work on all PCs, but obviously it does work better on Microsoft computers. But it can work on Macs. Absolutely, I talk to loads of people on Macs through Microsoft Teams, and it works great. And it's great for sharing documents, screens, and making use of an inbuilt chat function. What I should stress though, out of the three of them, Skype and Zoom are very much set up for video conferencing, whereas Microsoft Teams is a bit more of a holistic package of software. The video chat function and the ability to video conference is only part of Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams is set up for sharing of documents, this collaboration. So just bear in mind that you're going to get a lot of extra stuff from Microsoft Teams which you might not necessarily want. So what are the pros? You can record, so you can record your interviews. It's what I do. I record my lectures through Microsoft Teams, and you have a great audio and quality through there. You can conduct focus groups through there. It's not as intuitive as Zoom because the difference is you can only see 4 people on your screen when you're using Microsoft Teams. So if you've got more than 4, it can be difficult to see those people. So again, keep that in mind. You can hide your backgrounds. And I think it's great because you can share documents and screens. So some interviewers and interview techniques, when they are face-to-face, they will show their participants a document or a picture and use that as an anchor to start asking their questions and getting them to discuss something. That's certainly the case with focus groups. You'll often use some sort of picture or graph or something to generate conversation. It has the ability for you to share that digitally if you're going to go down that route. And you have the chat function as well, which is great again if you've got some focus groups going on. Well, cons out of the 3 is probably the least familiar to people, although hopefully the more that this time goes on, it's going to become more and more familiar with people working from home. I say it can be complicated to set up because it's not just a simple case of signing in and phoning somebody like you can on Skype or Zoom. It can be a little bit more complicated because, as I say, it's a bit more of holistic software. It's got all different bits to it, and the video part of it is just one part. As mentioned before, not everyone wants to download the new software, and it's been well documented recently, certainly in the early days of people after this lockdown working from home. It has had outages in the past because, as I say, not many people used to use it. And then a lot of people then started to go towards Microsoft Teams. I think we're currently what date are we on? The 22nd of April, as I'm recording this, 2020. So around about week 4 or 5 into lockdown. And I think now I've not heard of any other issues since that first week or so. But you always run the risk of their servers being overrun. So just again, keep that in mind of what potential software and some limitations that you may have. So what's the positives then about this? Well, fundamentally, you can now access participants that you might not have reached otherwise. So yes, we can't go visit people, or currently anyway in the current climate, I say as of late April 2020, we're still in lockdown. You can't actually physically go out and do face-to-face interviews with your participants. So you can just leave your research, or do we go online and do online interviews and actually get some data? Other things as well, in terms of access, is you may well have had people who potentially lived in other parts of the country, and then you would have had to make that journey, or you decided not to include them because you couldn't actually travel that far, even before the lockdown. Now you can actually get them. You can actually, chat virtually, so you can actually get them that way. And like I say, other people might not have actually wanted to take the time out of their day to do a face-to-face, but now actually want the distraction, are more than happy to actually go out and do this virtual interview. It is the next best thing in terms of face-to-face. Obviously, face-to-face is our gold standard of interview technique. Then we have our video conferencing, our online one, and then lastly we have telephone interview. Or you might also have the novel one of email interviews, which is starting to become a little bit more common now as well. But this is the next best thing out of the four. It's potential to increase efficiencies and participant partake. So, like I mentioned, it's saving you having to travel to places. You can record stuff here, and then straight away get straight into analysing your data and transcribing it. And as I mentioned previously, if you can record your screen, then it's fantastic for verbatim transcriptions. So if you don't know what verbatim transcriptions are, effectively what they are is when you document absolutely everything that has happened, every pause, every change in speech. Have they gone up? Have they gone down? Did they lean back in their chair? Did they lean forward? Did they laugh? That kind of stuff. Non-verbatim is just when you write what they've said and you take away all those ums and ahs. So if you are doing verbatim, that's great because you've got a super accurate record of what's happened. Well, the negatives then, well, you might have to conduct interviews outside of your standard working hours. Biggest one, obviously, is technology and connection issues. So not everyone's going to have super internet. I know I don't. Mine goes off frequently, which is very frustrating. So certainly it's kind of shown relatively recently, at least in a UK context, how overwhelmed the system can get relatively easily. Their technology as well, have they got suitable technology to access? Keep that in mind. There's an issue of bias and truthfulness from your participants due to their location. So if they're at home, and you're discussing other stuff, sometimes they may actually be quite conscious of what they're saying because there's other people in their household. So you might well get an issue there in terms of bias and truthfulness. There's ethical issues, and again, I'll come on to this a little bit later, but if you're recording, obviously people are going to be working from home. They might have kids, they might have partners. Unless they've got noise cancellation headphones on and you can only hear their voice, you may well pick up something on your audio that you weren't meant to hear from a different family member, a different conversation. That's an ethical issue, so it's important that you make sure that you're only going to listen to what they say, and if you do happen to hear anything else, that you're going to discard that. Be prepared for a lack of participation due to work commitments, family life from people. So if you've had people who said, yeah, I'm happy to do face-to-face, and now they're more reluctant to do this, you've got to take that on the chin. You've got to understand that we're all currently in this very unprecedented situation, so you may well have a lack of participants. And rapport building, it does become harder. So while interviews often hang on good rapport with people, you can easily get that when you're face to face, because you've got that social interaction. You know, as humans, we're used to that social interaction in a proper space. Doing it virtually can be a little bit harder, so it can take them a little bit longer to become fully trusting and fully tell you truthfully what they actually feel, because you're doing it via a computer screen, especially if you've never met before as well. That can be a little bit more of a challenge. So something I should mention is, this is new for most of us, is so always an effective qualitative researcher is a reflective one. So after every interview that you do, you should spend time reflecting on what was said, how it was said, what information is cared, but more importantly, what didn't go well. So after your first one, what can you change? What didn't quite go well? Is there something about your questions that didn't quite come across well enough through the computer screen? Did you talk too quickly? Did you talk too slowly? Did you leave too much of a gap, too much of a pause? Have a think about that. So reflection and reflexivity becomes so important when you're doing online interviews, rather than your face-to-face, although it's important for that, is because there's a lot more chances for you to get errors and stuff to become harder to get that data through the computer screen. So anything you can do to improve on that is good. I've done videos on this before, I think it was in the previous one, so I won't touch on it too much, but just be aware that you may well have some research bias and impression management going on. So when you actually conduct your online interview, obviously if you're doing it from your bed in your pyjamas, what kind of impression is that going to come out and give your participant? Are you going to sit there in a shirt and tie and blazer and be really smart for your interviews? Is that going to create a power dynamic when people are already working from home and those kind of formal dress codes necessarily aren't adhered to anymore? And how that might well influence what your participant says and those inadvertently power structures and dynamics. So just be wary of that. As I have a video on this which you can find. So some of your ethical considerations should always, of course, adhere to these at all times, but more so than ever. You've got to be honest and objective about what you can actually achieve in your research through this method and with your participants. It's going to be integrity as well. So say if you do hear anything, then you're going to make sure that you're going to ignore that. Carefulness, and make sure that your participants aren't harmed in any way, and you've got to keep it confidential. So I'll just highlight some of the main things here. Is that consent is still important because you're doing it online. There's no different if you're doing a telephone or face-to-face. You need to get your consent. And I've highlighted two here, which is the main things really, which slightly differ from your face-to-face, is the privacy of your research participants needs to be ensured. So if you are recording their screen and they've seen their physical face, have they okayed that? Because you could then give that to somebody, they can be easily identified. How are you going to treat that recording? Where are you saving it? Because it's one thing to have their voice, and it's another thing to have their voice and their face. So you've got to think from a privacy point of view. That is a bit of a big question that you're going to have to decide from the outset. Are you just going to record audio, or are you going to record their actual face as well? And you're going to have to tell them that. And if they know that, and they know they're being recorded, that may well alter what they're going to say. And I say, how are you actually going to keep that separately? How are you going to store it? How are you going to make sure it's safe? And then finally, as part of that, is making sure that if you do hear, so I can't stress this enough, if you do hear something else on your audio, to ignore that and discard that and try and forget about it. But obviously it's hard to forget about whatever you've heard because you've heard it. But as a researcher, none of that can go into your research whatsoever or even be discussed. So you need to make sure that the privacy and the anonymity of individuals and other people in that research are secured. So, other than that, thank you guys. Good luck with your online questionnaires, interviews even. If you're doing online questionnaires, then I do have videos of how to set that up if you're thinking of doing that. Again, please do subscribe and follow the links in the description. And good luck. Thank you very much.